On today's show, the San Diego Padres are back in more ways than one, recapping the opening day W for your favorite team ever, of course, in the San Diego Padres, as well as some other thoughts on the rest of the roster, like Jake Cronenworth, Eggy Rosario, Jackson Merrill's Major League home debut, all sorts of stuff. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Friday, March 29th. As always, I'm your host, with sometimes occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You may be familiar with my Twitter, at Javipeno, Javiipeno. Go follow me on there. And in terms of my resume, I do a bunch of stuff over at justbaseball.com, writing about not just the Padres, but baseball in general. And I also have a new show called Baseball vs. the World, which you can follow on Twitter at Baseball vs. World, which is just more of the fun stuff and what have you. At @LO_Padres for the show account. Locked On Padres on YouTube to see Pac-Man and Tatis. And if you're a visual person, it's a good time, folks. We are back. Oh, it feels so good to be back, ladies and gentlemen, here. Padres baseball. Now, don't get me wrong. It did actually technically start like a week ago. But as I talked about on this show, that there was a weirdness with the Soul series in the sense that I loved it. I thought it was fun. I liked the culture. I liked the different vibe of the whole thing. I liked the uniforms. I liked the logo and the design and everything. It was really fun, but it's weird to start off your season that way. It almost feels like you're playing like an international friendly, the way that, say, in soccer, I think that's what they do, where you'll have like USA versus Costa Rica randomly, like at some points. I think, again, for all my soccer heads, please feel free to let me know. But that's what it felt like, where it's like this game matters, obviously, but there was just a feeling of like, but for the opener, that's a little bit weird. So this felt like an official opener, and they played very well, obviously. The Padres getting the W 6-4, Darvish getting the start in this game, and he does pretty good. We're going to be recapping a little bit. And I just want to say, most of this podcast isn't going to be just game recaps all the time. Monday, for example, we will be doing a little bit of a series recap, but the mailbag portion will still be part of it. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to just do straight recaps, especially because especially when we get later into the season, when I don't think that individual games are necessarily as cool. While at the beginning we want to talk about because it's baseball's back. And by the way, great crop of opening day games. I had the Yankees game on because my mom was watching. That was really fun. Soto throwing out a runner at home. Unfortunately, yes, we miss him. Still a bad defender, but arm strength is still there. Throwing out the runner in Houston, that was interesting to see, and he drove in a run for them, got a bunch of walks. And then there was also a great Rangers game that ended in extra innings. There was like good stuff. The Diamondbacks throttled the Rockies. Really great opening day. I'm so happy baseball's back. I think that it's important not to overreact. Obviously, everyone's going to be telling you that on all of your favorite baseball podcasts today. It's early. It's one game. Everyone's going to do that. But I do think that this Padres victory, in terms of the sentiment of it, was really strong. And that is, remember that this is a team that has been just super inconsistent, really letting its fan base down over these last few years. I mean, the fact that last year they just had these sellout crowds like every night, and then they would just lose and never drive in runs, was like really frustrating for a lot of people, and myself included. I'm not even in San Diego. I'm on the East Coast, as my listeners and followers may be well aware, that I watched this and I'm like, I mean, Tatis is up to bat, it's second and third, and he gets out and the whole crowd's going nuts. It's like, what's going on here? Like, they're there. You know, you can't use that as an excuse. So it's really cool to see the fans, at least in the early going, get a nice W to start off the season. Last year, they had that with more hype than I can remember ever having, I think, for a Padres season. And this one, don't get me wrong, there's still excitement, but last year there was like this is easily a World Series contender. It's just about, you know, where they finish in the standings, stuff like that. And then of course they don't make it. And then they lose to the Rockies, who just got throttled by the Diamondbacks yesterday. The Rockies, for some reason, historically, not historically, but the past few years recently, have played the Padres really well. And then they won that game, and CJ Cron went Babe Ruth and all that. And this game, it was just a good old-fashioned fine baseball game. The Padres winning 6-4. Darvish getting the start. Looked sharp, by the way. Looked pretty good. 5 innings, 1 earned run on 5 hits, only 1 walk, 6-7 Ks. I think the thing I like the most is the 1 walk. As I mentioned before, it appears that Darvish is definitely on the downturn, I think is a thing to point out. But he had, when he was healthy, you remember 2 years ago, when he was just not striking out nearly as many batters, his strikeout rate took a significant dip. But what he was doing was being in control and pitching a lot of innings. He was just consistent, and he was never giving up the big hits. And I think yesterday he did a pretty dang good job against a Giants lineup that I've talked about with my crossover with Ben Kaspic, so go check that out. That there was one of the reasons why I thought the Padres would win this series, and I think that they have a chance at a sweep, is because I think that this Giants lineup, it's going to take a second to mold. Some of the guys came a little bit late. Snell came a little bit late. We're not going to see him yet against the Padres. We'll probably see him next week, I believe the Padres play the Giants again. Let me just check that real quick. Yes, they play them after St. Louis next Friday. So we'll probably see him in that series, or at least we might see him in that series. But this Giants lineup, there's like a lot of new pieces for them, right? They have Jorge Soler. They have Matt Chapman. They have, Patrick Bailey, who's going to have a full season now. Nick Ahmed, Jung-Ho Lee, the starter for them, who actually gets one of their RBIs in this game, by the way. He goes 1 for 3 with an RBI, has made some good contact as well. Again, it was just, I just think that this is a good series to start the season off for the Padres. And Darvish looked great. Not a lot of whiffs on a lot of his pitches, which wasn't great. Not a lot on the fastball. He did throw one crazy knuckle curve to get a K at one point, which was awesome. By the way, he was great there. And in general, there's not too much else to talk about in terms of crazy stats. The hardest hit ball of the day goes to Michael Conforto. And then the second hardest hit ball was from Jake Cronenworth, which was awesome, him getting an RBI in this one. But Darvish looked sharp. Again, I've said this before 100 times, but it is all just if he's healthy. I really do think that this is one of those things where if he's healthy, he'll be great, right? Like, I really do think it's that simple. Because when you look at the tenure of him with the Padres, that's basically been every time he's been bad, you can trace it to something injury related, right? And don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean unlucky. He is old. I think when you get to this point with a player like this, it's not unlucky if they get injured. It's more like that just kind of comes with the package. You know what I mean? If it's almost like complaining about Byron Buxton getting hurt. Well, it's like, well, that's part of his package as a player, what you get or lack thereof. In terms of the other side, though, I know that I saw some Padres fans getting antsy on Twitter. Logan Webb goes 6 innings, only 2 earned runs in this one, 2 walks, 5 Ks, but he was like lights out to start, got Tatis on a couple pitches. And again, there were some people freaking out, like, of course, here we go, 2023 Padres all over again. Guys, I ain't freaking out. Like, the same way I'm not freaking out that the Dodgers were hitting up our bullpen, and especially our starting pitching in this whole series, right? Like, I'm not going to freak out about that. Like, come on, like, it's the Dodgers. I'm not going to freak out about Padres not being able to hit Logan Webb immediately. I posted on Twitter, there's only like 4 starting pitchers that I would take over Logan Webb. I'm talking Strider, Garrett Cole. I'm very high on George Kirby. So that's like a personal one for me. Maybe Corbin Burns, right? Guys like that. Otherwise, I'm taking Logan Webb. He is a maddening pitcher to face. Don't just look at the fact that his strikeout rate isn't the highest. He generates as soft contact as you could ask for, if I phrase that correctly, and he generates the most like ground balls of like any really great starting pitcher in the league. Like, that's how good so you have to understand he's not a strikeout guy. He toys with you, and it's maddening. And he never walks guys. He always generates grounders, and he's just not giving up big hits. You know what I mean? He's maddening. It's like all of his pitches have this annoying curve thing at the very end of it that screws with hitters. But eventually, of course, the Padres do tag him a little bit for some runs. It's funny that some of the runs come from like the most unexpected players. Jerkson Profar getting the first RBI for this team in the bottom of the 5th inning, which was great. He then gets taken out of the game, which I don't know exactly why. I didn't see that there was an injury, so I was a little bit confused by why they took him out after having such a big hit. You know what I mean? That was a little bit weird by Schilt, but of course it ended up being okay. Also worth noting that Tyler Wade got involved in the action as well. Him hitting a ground out, allowing Ha-Seong Kim to score, so it was a little bit of a sacrifice. So that was cool. Why is Tyler Wade starting? He's giving me a little bit of Rougned Odor vibes, where I just don't think that this is going to last very long. I really don't. I think that Grant Pauly will be there soon. I think Eggy Rosario will be there soon. He actually pinch hits for Tyler Wade in this game, so I really think that it could just be a right or lefty thing. They like the matchups. I just don't expect Tyler Wade to be there that long. And if he's going to hit the way he has been hitting, which is being okay, then yeah, maybe you just ride the hot hand for a little bit, at least to start the season. But I don't think that he's going to be there that long, so nobody freak out about that. But of course, there's a lot of other things we got to talk about, including Jake Cronenworth's big ol' RBI that I alluded to before. But before we do that, folks, I want to take a second to talk to you about our friends over at FanDuel. We love FanDuel, ladies and gentlemen. Say goodbye to busted brackets. You might be wondering, oh no, UNC lost last night to Alabama. What an upset. My bracket's finished. Heck, I was finished a week ago, but this super finishes it. Well, don't worry. FanDuel still has you covered with all the things you want. Individual games for the rest of the tourney, both men's and women's. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a one seed, it's time to go dancing with America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even bet on who's going to win it all. Oh, who's it going to be? Who's it going to be? For the women's, it looks like South Carolina, let me tell you. Men's, I have no idea, but we'll see. We'll see. You can check that out, guys. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down those nets or many other sports, including, of course, baseball. Go check it out at FanDuel. And just like that, we're back here, ladies and gentlemen. Weird start to the podcast, I know, but we're back here. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. Free and available on all platforms. Whew. What else do we talk about with this game? Well, later on, in the top of the 7th, the Padres lose the lead because of one Jhony Brito, which is worth talking about. Jhony Brito did not make the starting rotation. I think that it looks like it's going to be Matt Waldron. Also worth noting on the opening day roster, the opening day roster, not in terms of necessarily who played, but Woo-Sok Go did not make the team. And I think that part of that is why you're going to see Jhony Brito in some reliever situations. He was quite bad, though, and he's looked really bad so far. I mean, he was bad in the Dodgers game. He was brought in a high-leverage situation. Here, he did not perform well either. Cosgrove was great, 1 inning, 2 strikeouts. The rest of the bullpen was fine. Yuki Matsui actually goes 1 2/3, by the way. Doesn't get any strikeouts or anything like that, but he's a type of reliever, man. I think this kid's good. But I really think that he's good. I think that he's going to be solid, and I think that there's a chance that he ends up being the closer at some point, depending on what happens with Suarez, who, doesn't have the best moment in this game. But Jhony Brito, man, just not the best. I think he's one of those guys where, when Woo-Sok Go's ready, if he's ready, maybe he comes up to replace Jhony Brito. But for now, they've elected, it seems like, that Matt Waldron will get the 5th spot in the rotation, at least to start, and especially until someone like Robbie Snelling is ready for the Padres. Maybe Randy Vasquez makes some appearances too, but Brito making the roster, not a great start for him though. 0, just only gets 1 out, gives up 2 earned runs on 3 hits. He looked rough. He just did not look in control. He didn't look like he was overpowering anyone, fooling anyone. Nick Ahmed is someone who gets the big RBI in this inning. Nick Ahmed can't hit at all, really. Not at all, but he's not a very good hitter. That's not what he's known for. And then Jung Ho Lee gets the sac fly. So, look, not the worst thing ever, but he didn't look great. And I just think that they're going to test him out here for now because I don't think they like him in the rotation, and maybe he's going to be sent down at some point. But don't lose hope because, as I talked about before the season, it's nice that some of the Padres' depth options are people with, really, really good or really young, I should say, options. It's cool that a Vasquez, a Snelling, a Brito, even in the case of Woo-Sok Go, it's cool that some of your options aren't tired, washed up, aged, known quantity guys. I think that means a lot. So Jhony Brito, rough game, but it's okay. And then this Padres strike back immediately, which was great to see again. Good for the vibes because of the morale of the fan base because of last year for you to bounce back immediately. Luis Campusano scores on what is a wild pitch, trying to get, I believe it is Tyler Wade at the bottom of the 7th inning, trying to steal second. I believe it was him. Was it? No. Hold on. Let me see if I can find this. What was the inning where Tatis made it from 1st to 3rd? That already happened, right? At this point? I don't remember, but you guys get my point. An errant throw by Patrick Bailey, which is rare. He's a very good catcher. He's one of the best defensive catchers in baseball, if not the best, by the way. Errant throw, bounces off of Nick Ahmed's chest into the outfield, allowing Luis Campusano to score. Bogarts then hits a bloop single. Blooper is such a fun word, by the way, to describe hits. So shouts to him. Getting a single that allows Tyler Wade to score, moving Jackson Merrill over. And then Jake Cronenworth basically putting away the game with a ripped double down the right field line. That is now the 2nd big double he's had. And look, Cronenworth, hot start for him. Love to see that from the guy. And 2 for 4 in this game. 1 for 4 in this game with 2 RBIs, a double. Look, I think it's I think with Cronenworth, I talked about why I didn't mind him batting third. I just don't want to give up. I don't want. Yes, this contract could be bad. It is in my opinion one of Preller's worst decisions because I just don't know who you were bidding against. Like, blah 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 blah. I've talked about this a lot, and I'll talk about it more again if he ends up stinking this year, which is not impossible, but we'll see. I just think that you have to diversify your lineup a bit. You have to get a lefty in there at some point, and you don't want to just have 6 straight guys that are hitting righty. And I think that's important. And I think it's cool that you're putting Cronenworth in a position where it's like, hey, we trust you and we think you're great. You don't actually hit the ball on the ground too much. You're not that liable for like double plays and stuff like that. He doesn't hit into a lot of them when you look at the course of his career. So that's cool. And the third spot might not be as conducive to RBIs as people think. Bogarts as a leadoff hitter is very interesting to me. Like really interesting. I don't know if that's going to stick, by the way. I don't know if that'll for sure stick. I just there's something about it, but we'll see. We'll see. Because I understand there's not necessarily like a proven other option. Now Tatis has been great in the leadoff spot, but he's great anywhere. 1 for 4 from him in this game, by the way. Not the best, but second hardest hit ball of the day. It's coming, guys. Just give it a minute. Just give the poor guy a second, all right? I know everyone wants to see MVP Tatis like immediately, but just give him a minute. Hey, if anything, you got a great moment in this game in which a ground ball was hit as he was attempting to steal second and then got to third because of it. That's how fast this guy is. What a freak athlete. We love him. But yeah, I just love that they're putting Cronenworth in a position like this. Give him some confidence early on after having a bad season. He clearly cares so much. Not saying there's anyone on this Padres team that doesn't, but love to see that. Big hit for him. That basically puts the game away. Last thing that happens, though, Robert Suarez comes in and doesn't ease any of the concerns that people might have because of what happened last year, where you saw a giant decrease in his strikeout rate. And he goes 1 inning, gives up 1 big hit, though, to Michael Conforto. And look, longtime listeners, everybody knows I have this like obsession with thinking Michael Conforto is secretly like the most undervalued player in the league. And like, I pitched the idea of trading Ha-Seong Kim, and maybe one of, I didn't say the only piece, one of the pieces you could get back in return is Michael Conforto because I believe in him. But again, that wouldn't have worked. I actually really wanted Lamont Wade. I thought that would have made more sense. But Conforto, again, I don't know if he'll be good this year, but I will say for the Giants, if he is good and returns to any of that form that he had with the Mets, this Giants lineup could be good. I'm not out on this Giants team. I'm just not. I know that they have problems with their rotation. I talked about it on the podcast with Ben, which you guys can go check out. I posted yesterday the preview of the series where I think that they're one of those teams ripe for success in the second half. I just don't think that they're going to start off strong. But let me tell you, if Conforto's hitting for them, that's another wrinkle. And remember, Conforto has been awesome. And I'm bringing this up because they are a division rival. And considering that this division looks like it's going to be, Godzilla versus Kong, it's going to be just insane, like nonstop. It's worth talking about some of the other teams. In this case, my thing would be you add that onto some of the other players that they have. It could be great. Michael Conforto has been an awesome home run player before. It was just last year he just kind of lost it for whatever reason. He wasn't a very good player. He was just a good bench player was what his role was last year. But this is a guy who's had a 127 WRC plus. He had a 158 in 2020. He's hit 33 bombs before. Like, I think he's got potential, so don't sleep on that guy too much as it's become a little bit of a meme. Also in this game, Luis Campuzano quietly 2 for 4. I'm sure that the mass of baseball fans will ignore that and keep pretending that he's the 45th ranked catcher. 2 for 4 in this game. That's basically all that's worth talking about. Ha-Seong Kim with an intentional walk and a regular walk, as well as getting 1 hit and then having a stolen base. So busy day for Kim, which was nice to see. Just good stuff all around, guys. But we're not done recapping this. We're not done talking about the vibes, ladies and gentlemen, of this Padres team. We'll talk about a few more things that I want to discuss in just a second, guys. But first, a word from our sponsors. And just like that, we are back, ladies and gentlemen, here on the Locked On Padres podcast, winning moments of the show, opening day extravaganza. And look, there were other observations I had. I want to talk about some of the more fun things that I want to mention. Any of y'all see those cleats that Tatis had for Peter Seidler? They were really cool. And I'm not like a big shoe guy. I'm actually I'm the type of guy who has like sometimes once in a blue moon, 2 pairs of sneakers at a time. And that's it. Like, I am not a sneakerhead person, but It looked really cool, and it's going to be cool. And I like the patch in the outfield, the grass, the PS. Like, hey, if you're someone who believes in like the sentiment and the vibes of something, then doing this for Peter Seidler is having that like as someone who you're remembering for this year. It has like a little bit of an extra oomph to get the team motivated. A guy who came in and said, "Let's try." You know what I mean? Like fundamentally, like that's what he was as an owner. And when you look around the rest of the league, full of owners who don't want to try. They want to just get their extra Maserati or whatever. They just want to go and get another yacht. They want to go and invest in private equity, whatever it is, instead of actually caring about baseball. It's refreshing. So, shouts to Seidler. And the cleats were awesome. Go look them up. They should be on social if you haven't seen them. I'm pretty sure the Padres account tweeted it, or at least they might have. I already mentioned how it was weird that they took out Profar. I just didn't quite understand that in this game. Now, I do understand the Azokar thing, and I think that's worth talking about. Profar, look, he was like, it cannot be emphasized enough. There's a reason why the Padres only had to pay him $1 million. You know what I mean? Because Jackson Profar was horrendous last year. He got a nice hit in this game, and again, there's just something about him that he plays infinitely better with the Padres. I've never been able to explain it, but remember last year, this guy was good for -2 WAR. He only hit 9 home runs. His WRC plus was 76 in Colorado. And then the last thing, his defense was horrendous too. I believe he's one of the worst qualified fielders in Major League Baseball, if I'm not mistaken. Let me check last year. He was -11 defensive runs saved and -13 outs above average. That's like Soto, but worse. Profar in the outfield. So Azokar, maybe that was the thinking here. We want to put someone in with some more speed. Azokar not getting a hit in this one. I've said before that I really don't mind Azokar as a bench piece, and I've also said that I didn't like that Grisham was just blindly, shouts to Bob Melvin, manager of the Giants, just being put in the lineup every day, like no matter what, despite the fact that he might be 4 of his last 44, just because of the defense. And my thing's like, I get it, he has more power potential, and I think he had more potential as a batter than someone like Jose Azokar, who just doesn't seem to have any pop. But Jose Azokar, like all the metrics, and when you watch him play outfield, he's fast. He's got a good jump on the ball. I think he could be a good defender, so I never understood why it was a monopoly on the position from Grisham. I just don't understand what Grisham was doing offensively that made you think we can never try out Azokar. And again, I know he doesn't have the best hitting tool. I get that. But it was just a little bit weird for me. Just a little bit weird for me that it was like 95% Grisham. That's all I'm saying. And he pinches for him. And again, I was weirded out, though, because I think it's just weird to take him out after having a big RBI like that. But I did talk about preseason. There's a lot more mix and match opportunities. And I'm excited for Schilt to take advantage of that. I'm excited for Schilt to genuinely try doing new things with this team, with these players, most days. I know that a lot of people are expecting, and I am still expecting too, Tommy Pham to sign with the team. I still think it's going to happen. I haven't seen an update lately, but it seems like, I just think it's going to happen. But it needs to happen soon because like the season started, so that's weird. But with Jurickson Profar, speaking of season started, maybe one of the reasons, by the way, that he was bad last year, I just thought of this, was he signed really late. Maybe he was just thrown off by that. I don't know. And maybe he just really didn't want to sign with the Rockies. So maybe he was just annoyed that his agent maybe let him down or whatever. I don't know. But regardless, that's over now. Azokar in left field, I can actually see that happening a decent amount, especially if their thing is we want to have some really rock solid defense. And if they don't like Profar out there, especially based on what he was last year, and even his best year with the Padres, not the best defender, not terrible, but not the best defender. A lot of his defensive value, I think, that best year with the Padres in 2022 came from just a lot of outfield assists early on in the season. You know what I mean? He was getting a lot of those, and that's not always the best way to view defense, because Juan Soto, for example, has a lot of outfield assists because he has a good arm, but he's always letting balls get past him, making errors, all that stuff. So, again, I don't mind it. I was just a little bit weird. He did get the big RBI. It was the first home RBI of the season for the Padres. So shout out Profar, player who inexplicably gets better when he's with the Padres. No one has figured it out. It is one of the great mysteries of the universe. Let's talk about Merrill now. Jackson Merrill, the boy, saving him for last. Major League home debut. He goes 0 for 2 in this game with a walk and a strikeout. He scores. Does he score a run? He scores 1 run. My impression, and look, I'm not a scout, so I don't want to break down smaller sample size, especially when it comes to a prospect. Like, how am I going to do that? I'm not going to be this guy who reads into plate appearances, or not plate appearances, the look, the batting stances and all that. I'm just not an expert on, okay, Yeah, I know that you guys will find like changes and whatnot for different batters. I've seen videos comparing Trent Grisham batting stances, and then it didn't change much. So don't get me wrong, it's worth pointing out, but I don't want to use that and then suggest, oh, this could be huge like they're doing it. It's nice to point out if someone is changing things around, but for me, I don't know if that change is just going to be what's the word? Like sprinkles. Like it's not going to be actually mean anything, right? Like it's just going to be the exterior. I'm looking for a word to explain optics. There we go, optics, like the optics of it versus like what we'll actually produce. But I will say this: Jackson Merrill, one thing it seems that he was known for, his calling card, is his bat to ball skills. And so far through these games, you've seen that. You've seen him foul off tough pitches that usually fool young rookie players, which is nice. He just looks solid out there. Don't get me wrong, he still struck out. He had a 2 strikeout game in Seoul as well, but he looks a lot more comfortable up there. And I'm going to compare them for a second to CJ Abrams. CJ Abrams was looking really overpowered. And by the way, that's fine. I think he's going to be good this year. I've been on the record on this podcast saying that, hey, Abrams and James Wood, those guys might be studs that they gave up for Juan Soto. Like, don't be surprised if they are. It's just that it's taking CJ Abrams a little bit more time. But Abrams, he was a baby when he got brought up by the Padres. And that's probably the reason why he looks so overpowered during a lot of his early at-bats. In that season, in that stretch of time he played with the Padres, he saw only 3.2 pitches per plate appearance. Pitchers were just attacking him. And by the way, pitches per plate appearance, that doesn't mean that it's always bad if you're low, right? But he just wasn't seeing that many. And 3.2 was really low. Like, that's like in the 200s range. Like, he was bad. 3.20 pitches per plate appearance. He was just getting overpowered. It's like the pitchers knew he's not ready yet. He's not going to swing at these fastballs that I throw right down the middle. He just didn't look right. He looked awkward, and it always felt like Abrams was getting to 0-2 counts every single time he came up to the plate. Merrill, so far, this is my one little analysis that I'm doing my best, doesn't seem to be getting overpowered. He doesn't seem to fall behind as much, and if he does, he's fouling off pitches better. He's taking some pitches inside. On pitches he probably shouldn't swing at, he's making contact, right? Like, I like that part of his game that I've seen so far. Really cool stuff. And in center field has looked fine. Hasn't really been tested out there too much yet. You know what I mean? Like, there's not too much that he's been tested with, but he's looked all right. I think he's looked all right. He is one of the great X factors for this team. I just alluded to it, that I think that there's a lot more bench depth with this team. I'm excited to see Mike Schilt mix and match, but there's also a lot of pressure on him because outside Zokar, there's really no other proven center field guy. You know what I mean? On this roster, maybe you move Tatis eventually over the course of the season. Maybe some trades happen. Maybe they want to get a right fielder, whatever it is. I'm just saying, like, that's where we're at. And for me, look, if Jackson Merrill can come up and be a contributor, I'm talking like a rookie of the year guy, not even rookie of the year, but just a solid rookie. He doesn't have to be like what James Outman was last year for the Dodgers, but you know, one can hope, right? One can hope. I don't think he's going to have that power potential to start, but I don't think he's going to strike out nearly as much as a James Outman. So that's my thing. I think that, I think Merrill has been fine so far, and that is awesome for a rookie. Really, really awesome. I just think that this is a really big X factor for the team, and I'm hoping that he does well, because if he's good, all of a sudden that's another player that's going to be better than whatever the team was fielding last year. You know what I mean? All he has to do is be better than Trent Grisham. That's not an impossible task, even if he is super, super young. We'll see, though. We'll see. He is arguably the guy that I look forward to batting the most on this Padres team right now. I really do. Sorry, excuse me. One moment. I apologize. I want to make an apology to all the members of the Campuzano Hive. Of course, the Campy Hive, that is the guy that I look forward to the most. But outside him, I just can't wait. There's something exciting about having a young guy with potential that you have all this control on and can play center field for you. What is the one thing the Padres have been struggling with these past few years is center field. With Grisham, Manuel Margot wasn't that great. They fielded worse, don't get me wrong, but they haven't been as great there. So I'm really excited about that, guys. I'm really excited about that. And that's kind of it for the rest of the game. I mean, like I said, Robert Suarez, wasn't great to see him give up that home run, but it was okay. We did have a 3-run lead. Yuki Matsui looks great. I wouldn't be surprised if that guy ends up getting the closer role at some point. We'll have to see, though. We'll have to see on how Suarez goes. We'll have to see if any velo drops or any whiff rates or strikeout rates. If his strikeout rate is once again bad, then we have a problem. Because last year I thought it could have been fluky and injury related because he took a dip last year. But keep an eye out for that as well in the early going, especially depending on how he plays. Look forward to Luis Campuzano continuing to hit, as I've always told you. And that's basically it ladies and gentlemen. Opening day. We're finally there. In terms of the next game, which is going to be happening tonight, the Padres are sending out our boy Joe Musgrove against Kyle Harrison of the Giants, one of their top pitching prospect, but he's still just a rook. So it's possible you get some fireworks tonight. I am hoping that the Padres show out and just ball tonight. And I think that there's a decent chance of that. And yes, I'll be watching Musgrove. I'm not freaking out if he doesn't have a good start, but that combo with the spring training, just worth keeping an eye on. But the reason why you guys don't have to freak out, Logan Webb was horrendous in spring training. Didn't look too bad yesterday. So give it some time. Spring training's weird, especially for pitchers like this who are just testing out a lot of different pitch ideas and spin and vertical break, and they're not just trying to overpower guys with fastballs. Just give it a second. Give it a second. In terms of the future of this podcast, guys, you already know Monday we are going to be doing the news recap as well as the breakdown of what happened over the course of the weekend. I'll give only the big highlights and then send in your questions. You can either DM me at Javapeno, at @LO_Padres, tweet at me at either account, or you can leave YouTube comments. I will be checking those over the weekend. I love whatever makes it. I've already got a couple of good questions already for this upcoming week, so look forward to that. Doing crossovers, might do them with the host over at Locked On Cardinals for next week, but guys, we're back. It feels amazing. I'm so happy to be talking baseball with you, and I hope that you join me for this journey this season as the Padres make the playoffs and potentially beyond. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. With that all being said again, that does it for today's episode of Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Remember to subscribe. Until next time, stay safe, and of course, stay faithful. My Friday faithful homies, take care.